Hello there, music lovers. Thanks for stopping by this video. Hope you're doing all right out there. There's been lots of new subscribers to this channel, so welcome to you guys. Welcome to the channel. And hey, this has been a rough week. You know, I picked the wrong week to stop sniffing glue. Let me tell you that right now. We lost another great one with Eddie Van Halen. It's hard to believe, even though we kind of maybe saw it coming. You know, Eddie Van Halen is just one of these guys that he was one of the most innovative, inspirational, naturally gifted and talented guitar players that the world has ever known. You know, Eddie was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of guitar player, and I don't throw that term around lightly. He was like the Beatles. He was like Jimi Hendrix. When you saw him, you had to take action. There was something that you needed to do. He inspired you. You were just in awe of his mastery of the guitar. He was a true innovator. As any true innovator, you see things differently, and Eddie saw the whole instrument much differently than any other person. And he was able to draw stuff out of the instrument using techniques that we had never seen before. And he also poured a lot into it. You know, every note that we heard, that was us listening to Eddie's soul. And it was a beautiful thing to both watch and to hear Eddie do his thing. And if you were a guitar player, you were amazed, you were inspired, and you maybe needed to go take some lessons, and you wanted to try this or that you saw him doing. And if you didn't play guitar, then you wanted to. That's the impact that he's had. And he had it not only then, but any new generation that listens to Eddie wants to be like him, they want to sound like him, and they're so inspired by the legacy that he's left us. And, you know, calling him a once-in-a-lifetime kind of guy also means that we're not likely to see another guy like him. You know, we're not likely to see anybody else make the same kind of impact that he has had on the guitar. And so, you know, it's a shame that we lost Eddie. He lost his battle to cancer this past week. It's been many, many years. There's been a lot of, you know, speculation. There's been a lot of events leading up to this, and I'm not going to go over that in this video. I will refer you to my last video about Van Halen called Running in Circles that I did last year. Of course, we're also learning now that the rumors of a reunion with the original lineup were in fact true. That was supposed to happen last year. It didn't. And I've also heard that maybe Sammy Hagar was going to be a part of that, like another Sam and Dave type of team up with Van Halen. That would have been really, really awesome. And now in retrospect, it would have been a great capper on the legacy of Van Halen. Now in this video, we're going to hear some things that are heartbreaking, heartwarming, and you know how it is on this channel. I give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, but on this video, it's going to be a love fest. I'm going to give you my fondest memories of Van Halen, you know, some things that really stood out to me, things that I really enjoyed about being a Van Halen fan all these years. And certainly, speaking of love fest, a lot of fans out there want to know, did Sammy Hagar ever reconcile with Eddie Van Halen before he passed away? And the answer is yes. Sammy Hagar was in contact with Eddie Van Halen. They really started to get along really great towards the end. And at least Sammy Hagar can go to sleep every night knowing that he corrected anything that might have been wrong between him and Eddie, whatever that was exactly. There were lots of good vibes going back and forth. And this is what Sammy Hagar had to say about that. He says, Eddie and I had been texting, and it's been a love fest since we started communicating this year. We both agreed not to tell anyone because all the rumors it would stir up about a reunion, etc. And we both knew that wasn't going to happen, but he also didn't want anyone to know about his health. And Sammy also released a video with Michael Anthony. They're currently doing some shows with The Circle, and they did a really heart-wrenching video talking about how they was like getting hit by a Mack truck and how they're both very devastated by this and kind of numb to it all and didn't really have a lot of words to describe how they're feeling at this time. I'm sure that we'll be hearing more as time goes on. Now, in terms of Eddie's guitar heroes, you know, guys that he looked up to, he would have told you that Eric Clapton was somebody that he absolutely admired, and, you know, Jimmy Page was another one that he really, really loved. And of course, Eddie Van Halen is known for his tapping technique. A lot of people think that he invented it. He actually didn't invent that technique. He just took it to a whole nother level. One of the guitar players that inspired Eddie Van Halen was Steve Hackett, who was a former guitar player for Genesis. He was tapping on the guitar in the early 1970s, and this is actually what Steve Hackett had to say about tapping and Eddie Van Halen. He said, Eddie and I have never spoken about it, but yes, he has credited me with tapping. When you see old films of Genesis from 1971 on, you can see me using the technique. It's there on many recordings as well. Eddie is a fine player, of course, and he's the one who named the technique. I'm the inventor of tapping on record. We haven't found anyone who tapped earlier than me unless somebody did it in the 1930s, but I doubt it. Now, as I mentioned, Eddie was also in awe of Jimmy Page, and he specifically mentioned watching him play the solo in Heartbreaker around 1973. And, Jimmy was also playing on the neck of the guitar. And, of course, Eddie Van Halen was also a big fan of Frank Zappa, and Frank Zappa admired him, too. They even jammed at Frank's house many, many years ago. And I believe that Eddie Van Halen gave Dweezil Zappa guitar lessons. And here's Frank in 1976 on the Mike Douglas Show playing on the neck, tapping, and this is something that Eddie picked up on, of course, but he took it to a whole nother level. And, Eddie, and that's the whole thing about not only Eddie, but Van Halen as well. He took a lot of these techniques and everything that may have been obscure with, the Steve Hackett's and the Frank Zappas and everything, and he brought it to the masses. Van Halen brought heavy metal and hard rock music to the masses. They bridged the gap between, let's say, metal and hard rock music and popular music. It was delivered with a smile, a lot of flash, a lot of melody, a lot of awesome hooks, and totally turned a whole new generation into hard rock fans that probably didn't realize that they were. Just take a look at the whole hair metal scene. And I talk about this in one of my more recent videos, Glam to Glum, how, Van Halen was a prototype for the whole hair metal scene. All the guitar players that came out after that wanted to be like Eddie, play like Eddie, whether it was Warren DeMartini, highly respected, Kirk Hammett from Metallica. I mean, pretty much every guitar player, credits Eddie Van Halen in some way, the same way that a lot of people credit the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix for inspiring them, which is why I say that Eddie was truly a once-in-a-lifetime kind of guy. And let's not forget that Eddie Van Halen wasn't just an awesome guitar player, but he was a great songwriter as well. I mean, he's the one that was responsible for writing all the riffs and all the music in Van Halen, and he worked very well with whatever lead singer he was working with, especially, David Lee Roth, let's say. And there's been lots of stories about how they didn't get along, and I've talked about that on this channel, but their differences were more kind of like lifestyle differences. David Lee Roth, very bossy, likes things done a certain way. You should be wearing this, we should be making this kind of video or doing more tour dates or whatever. But as far as creativity goes, they were very closely locked in. And, Eddie would come up with these great riffs, this great music, and David Lee Roth, he, had these lyrics that he came up with, and he was just so good in the studio, and they would play off of one another, and that's the magic that you hear on those early Van Halen albums. When Sammy Hagar came in, same thing. Sammy was great at coming up with lyrics. He really got a lot of good vibes off of Eddie Van Halen, and they gelled very, very well together. You can see how they were always smiling and were so goofy. And of course, Eddie also worked great with Gary Cherone. He'll tell you that it was very enjoyable, the time that he spent with Eddie. And of course, Eddie Van Halen was married to actress Valerie Bertinelli. They were married for about 20 years, and I remember first seeing her on this sitcom One Day at a Time when I was growing up. I was always thinking, she was such a cutie pie, right, guys? She still is cute. And they just look great together, and they actually almost look like brother and sister. Something about their nose and their chin or something. I always thought they kind of looked a bit similar. And of course, they had a son together, Wolfgang Van Halen, and they were all together along with his brother Alex and Eddie's current wife, Janie. They were there for him when he passed away. And from what I understand, his throat cancer had spread through all the organs in his body. And the last 72 hours or so of his life were pretty dire and went downhill pretty quick. And this is what Valerie had to say about her time with Eddie. She says, 40 years ago, my life changed forever when I met you. You gave me the one true light in my life, our son, Wolfgang. Through all your challenging treatments for lung cancer, you kept your gorgeous spirit and that impish grin. I'm so grateful Wolfie and I were able to hold you in your last moments. I will see you in our next life, my love. And there was also a message from Janie, Eddie's most recent wife. My heart and soul have been shattered into a million pieces. I never knew it was possible to cry so many tears or feel such incredible sadness. And Wolfie, Eddie's son, every moment I've shared with him on and off stage was a gift. My heart is broken, and I don't think I'll ever fully recover from this loss. I love you so much, Pop. And finally, there's Alex Van Halen. Hey, Ed, love you. See you on the other side. Your brother Al. You know, when they were kids, Eddie and Alex, they played instruments, and Eddie played the drums, and Alex played the Spanish guitar. He was taking lessons for that. And on the days when Eddie was off somewhere else, he'd come home to find Alex playing his drums. And that pissed him off, so he said, I'm going to play your guitar. And to Alex's amazement, Eddie was able to play these Spanish guitar compositions naturally and perfectly without any lessons, and he did it much faster than Alex could have ever done. And that just goes to show you how naturally gifted Eddie Van Halen was to be able to pick up Spanish guitar and just play it right away. It just goes to show you that, Eddie was a very special kind of guy. Also, the way Eddie would tell you is that he was lucky that now Alex started playing the drums, because instead of beating on him, they used to beat the shit out of each other. Now we could beat the drum set. Sammy Hagar had this to say about Eddie Van Halen and just the way that he played the guitar so naturally. I think Edward's an alien. He's not from this planet. I couldn't tell you which planet, but everyone on the planet probably plays guitar. One of my other great memories of Eddie Van Halen is when he threw that amazing solo on Michael Jackson's Beat It. You can't blame Michael Jackson for wanting Eddie on his album. I mean, look, if you're one of the best performers ever, don't you want one of the greatest guitarists ever? And what's so cool is that Eddie Van Halen did it for free and didn't even take credit. And he went down to the studio. Michael wasn't there initially, and he did his stuff. He did some rearranging, took some liberties with the song, actually. And this is what Eddie recollects about that time. He says, I didn't know how Michael Jackson, would react to what I was doing, so I warned him before he listened. I said, look, I changed the middle section of your song. Now, in my mind, he's either going to have his bodyguards kick me out for butchering his song, or he's going to like it. And so he gave it a listen, and he turned to me and went, wow, thank you so much for having the passion to not just come in and blaze a solo, but to actually care about the song and make it better. And there's this other story about Eddie Van Halen. He was one day shopping in a Tower Records, and Beat It came over the loudspeakers, and there were some kids kind of getting off to it, and this is his recollection of what happened. He says, this solo came on, and I hear these kids in front of me going, listen to this guy trying to sound like Eddie Van Halen. I tapped him on the shoulder and said, that is me. That was hilarious. All right, well, before we go any further, how about we do a little bit of hot for trivia, okay? Let's see if you can guess this one. Which guitar player did Eddie Van Halen make a 3-song EP with in 1983? Was it Sammy Hagar, Brian May, or Tommy Iommi? The answer is Brian May of Queen. That's right. Does anybody out there remember the Starfleet project by Brian May and Friends? This is an album that Brian May did just for some fun. He was inspired by his son, who was kind of got him into this Japanese sci-fi kid show called Starfleet. Brian decided to redo the theme song and take it to another level and have his friends come and jam with him. And this was never supposed to come out, but what you've got here basically is Eddie Van Halen and Brian May trading licks back and forth for about a half hour. And no, it doesn't rival Queen or Van Halen. It's just an interesting listen, a fun listen. And you get to hear Eddie Van Halen in a totally different setting, not doing his usual thing. And it's a real shame that this Starfleet project never came out on CD. Hopefully that will change. But if you want to hear it, I'll drop it in the playlist to this video. I'll throw a link up for that also in the description below, filled with interviews, lots of tributes to Eddie, lots of great music. Speaking of that, what are your favorite Van Halen songs and Van Halen albums? Drop that down below too. I'd like to know. What's your favorite Van Halen video? I know for me, it was Hot for Teacher. I mean, come on, Waldo. Waldo made the video, you know. Sit down, Waldo. And of course, you know, what was not to love about this video? This was the high school that you never went to, the teacher that you never had. You know, Eddie Van Halen having so much fun. It's just crazy. The guy's doing these goofy dance moves. And of course, the predictions of where they'd wind up in the future. And the one about David becoming a game show host, who knows? That may still happen. All right, so what is your favorite Eddie Van Halen riff? You got to have a favorite. For me, it's Mean Street. I love the riff in that song off of Fair Warning, one of my favorite Van Halen albums. And I say albums because, like I said before, they're not one of these bands that had like one key album. They have a lot of great albums, especially in the David Lee Roth era where they could practically do no wrong. Of course, I love the first album, a groundbreaking album, just from start to finish, tremendous album. The Fair Warning album was great. 1984, their last one with Roth for quite a while, was really great. I know I got a soft spot for Diver Down. I know that really doesn't get a whole lot of love, but I really do love that album too. And of course, when they got Sammy Hagar, you know, when I first heard Why Can't This Be Love, I remember 1986, when I heard that song, because look, being a kid, a big fan of the band, 1986, they're saying goodbye to David Lee Roth. How do you replace David Lee Roth? He was such an iconic singer. How could this be possible? And, you know, Van Halen achieved the impossible by bringing in Sammy Hagar and having the success that they did. And, you know, when I heard Why Can't This Be Love, I knew everything was going to be all right. I was like, these guys have got it. This is going to be great. And that album proved to be great. And they had, you know, many great albums with Sammy after that. Not a lot of bands can do that. A lot of bands nowadays, they get a replacement singer and they're just going on a nostalgia tour, playing the past. Van Halen, when they went on tour for 5150, they only played a couple of songs from the Roth era. Imagine that. You have the whole legacy of all those great albums with David Lee Roth, and you go on tour with this new lead singer and you only play a couple of old songs. That speaks to the strength of what they had with Sammy, a completely different band, but it was still Van Halen. And they had, just like I said, they achieved something that not a lot of bands do. AC/DC did it, but not everybody can do it. Let me know what you think about that. As a matter of fact, my favorite documentary about Van Halen was 1986's Unleashed. I saw this back on MTV back in the day, and it was such a ball of fun to watch this. It was about the transition between Roth and Hagar, and I still love it to this day. These guys are so happy to be with Sammy Hagar. And you know, one of the things about this documentary that you can't help but notice are the smiles that are going around with everybody in the band, particularly Eddie Van Halen, who was always smiling. Whether he was giving interviews or whether he was performing, he was always smiling. You know, it was almost like Eddie was saying, you know what, I'm having this much fun. Are you having as much fun as I am? And the answer is yes, Eddie, we have been. And we still are, and we always will be smiling whenever we think about you and the great musical legacy that you left for us. You will never be forgotten. So be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. That'll help get it in front of more fans who can pay tribute to the late, great Eddie Van Halen. And also be sure to subscribe to this channel. And until next time, happy trails to you. Until we meet again, all right? Take care.